Gio and I are spending our evening with Chelsea Perino, who is Zooming us from Hong Kong. She is the Managing Director of Global Marketing and Communications of the Executive Center. And Gio, did you rope her into the panel or did she rope you into the panel in Dubai?
She was roped in actually by Stormy and Liz.
Oh, okay. A Stormy and
There's a
Liz
third-party
connection.
roper in there.
So I reached out to them, and luckily, Stormy was actually flying at the airport, flying home from Juicy, Australia, Sydney, and she had just been with Chelsea. Chelsea was on a panel for Juicy Sydney.
Oh God,
So,
I didn't even know that had happened already. I thought that was
Yeah.
still, that's why Liz is so busy. Okay. Mara was like, Liz doesn't have time to prep with me. And I was like, I know she's throwing conferences. She does not have time. She's busy. And she was in Australia. Okay, that makes sense.
And now she's in Costa Rica. She's in Costa Rica with Lisa Sky
Oh,
and
that's right.
someone else is with them.
Yeah.
I can't think of it, but they're doing a conference out there. So
Okay. So
Tough life.
yeah, totally. Yes. Liz lives a tough life for sure. Okay. Speaking of life, Chelsea, I would love, so we know where you are now, and we want to hear more about that. I've never been to Hong Kong. And tell us your story. How did you get into the work that you're doing now?
Well, it's a long story, so I'll try and synthesize.
Tell us the interesting part.
Interesting way. Yeah, exactly. I'll give you the nuggets of interest. First of all, thanks a lot for having me. I'm super excited to be here. So my name is Chelsea, and I'm actually originally from the United States. I'm from New Mexico. So Giovanni and I were kind of neighbors, although there's a long distance between our respective cities. But I haven't lived in the US for a long time. So I went to NYU. I studied anthropology and linguistics with the plan of being a doctor. Changed my mind about 3 weeks before all my medical school applications were due and pulled them all and went traveling for what was supposed to be a year and turned into 4 and spent a lot of time overseas. I lived in South Africa for about 2.5 of those years on and off, which is where I kind of fell into marketing through a friend of a friend that needed some help and realized that communications was actually kind of where I was really passionate and quite good at that kind of strategy. So then I moved back to America and did my master's in public and organizational relations and started working in advertising in New York, and then had an opportunity to move with an agency based in Brooklyn to Korea to open a satellite office because they had just won the global remit for Samsung Mobile, whose headquarters is obviously in Seoul. So we moved over there with a small team, myself and a girlfriend of mine, and opened their satellite office and was there for about 2.5 years. And then I got recruited by the Executive Center to come to Hong Kong, moved blind, had only been here 1 weekend for about 3 days, and kind of threw the dice and said, this sounds like a really interesting opportunity. Obviously, I've been working in CPG and technology, so I had no experience with real estate. And I mean, I had actually been working in an executive center, so I was a client and I understood what the concept of flexible working was, but it was a very surface level and also from the other side sort of perspective, which I think is one of the reasons why Paul, our founder and CEO, was interested in bringing somebody with marketing experience that had actually been a customer to the team. So TEC was founded here in Hong Kong in 1994 by Paul, and has never had a marketing team before I was hired. So it was a really interesting opportunity for me to build something from scratch. And now fast forward 6.5 years later, which is crazy to believe, we've more than doubled in size. So when I started, we had 70, I think it was about 75 centers, and now by the end of this year, we'll hit 200. So it's been a whirlwind tour. And of course, with everything that's happening in the flex industry, it couldn't be a more exciting time to be working in this space.
Yeah, this is super interesting. 1994. Gio, I don't even know if the GWA, that might have been around when it was formed. That is early days for the Service Office Center, and now 180 locations in 33 cities and 15 markets. Wow.
It's really exciting.
Yeah. Gio, jump in.
If I'm being honest, y'all completely have flown under the radar. Like when they said that, I thought I was going to look and you had 4 centers or something like that. And
I know, I'm like,
unbelievable. I was just like, okay, all right.
But it also reminds us
everybody.
Not a small little toad in the water over there. Yeah, I mean, it's quite interesting. So we're only Asia based, right? So that's kind of one of our unique selling propositions in that We are Asia focused, so we have offices from Australia, and the furthest west we go is Abu Dhabi. We just opened the Middle East in Dubai in 2018, and then just now opened Abu Dhabi earlier this year, which is really an exciting new market, but that's really sort of our sweet spot, which is probably why a lot of people from Europe and from America are like, oh, you're that big? How's that possible? It's like, well, we don't have any connections to Europe or the US. Although we have a ton of clients from Europe and the US that come and use our offices because of the stability, the credibility, our locations, and just having the confidence that, you know, when they're opening a new office in Asia, for a lot of times, the first time, they can be confident that they're in good hands.
Yeah. And so have you been to Dubai yet, to your new office there? You have been?
Yeah, I have. So I went in September of last year. It's an amazing office, and the Abu Dhabi office, I went when it was under construction. So one of my favorite things is to go when the full floor plate is open and they're building, and you kind of go, how is this going to turn into something incredible? And then now when we're in Dubai in September, get to go see it in real life. So super excited to final product.
I'll definitely have to make a trip down there. And I don't know if I told you the full story. I know Jamie's kind of been part of it, but so when this year started, I made a commitment that I was going to try to expand not only my own brand, but expand the GWA's presence and brand outside of, number one, the US, but secondly, outside of just our flexible industry, right? And so Hornet, ULI, some of those bigger names, ICSCs, which the retail one is, how do we get outside that? And so I submitted in July. The way that Cornet is so different is you actually submit your your subject, your panel, everything, and they pick it, right? And so
you pick.
4 to 6 weeks ago, I got an email that said, "Hey, congratulations, you've been chosen for East meets West Dubai." And I was like, so I reached out and I was like, I think that I applied for Denver, and they're like, no, you checked the all box. And so the interesting part is for these deals, and it's the same way as we do for GWAs, we have panelists. I couldn't back out because then they weren't going to give me Denver, number one. And number two is they were probably never going to choose me again. So I went into like freak out mode of, okay, I originally had Jamie Hidari and Ryan Simonetti on, which are two amazing guys, but they don't have a presence in this part of the world.
Yeah.
And so it was just so interesting because then I went into, okay, so who makes sense? And obviously at the top of the list is always IWG. They're everywhere, right? And I was like, I can call Mark, but I really don't want to have Mark Dixon on a panel, right? It would just be Mark Dixon. And then I was like, okay, Serve Corp, and they're going through mass chaos, right? They've got all kinds of drama going on. They hired the IWG guy that's now gone there, and now he's no longer there. And then amazingly, Liz and Stormy brought you up. So it worked out absolutely perfectly. So I'm so excited to have a fireside chat with you and talk about kind of what you're seeing out there. And I think today's a really good opportunity, and I'll forward this to Cornet and hopefully they can circulate it, but to kind of start playing with that topic of what are y'all doing differently in this environment? I think y'all are further out than we are from the pandemic and everything, not to mention you were already further along the flexible workspace timeline, if you will. So I'd love to hear kind of what y'all are seeing out there, what y'all are doing differently, what's unique. So go.
Sure. Wow. Oh my gosh, where to start? So, I mean, I think what's interesting for TC is that because we have so many locations in so many different regions, it's quite different than the US because, I mean, obviously you have all of the different states, but I mean, there's a uniform language, there's lots of similarities from a culture perspective, but for us, I mean, you're talking about a difference between Hong Kong and Australia or India and Vietnam. I mean, really, really different cultures, different languages, different approaches to work, everything. So for us, we really needed like a think global, act local approach for especially during COVID, but also even as we emerge from that, because all of our different regions experienced that in very, very different ways. So as an example, I live in Hong Kong. In Hong Kong, we never had any kind of governmental mandate to close offices, right? So our offices were open for the entire period of COVID times. Now, the attendance was super, super low because Conversely, Hong Kong was super strict with close contacts, and people were getting put in quarantines if you were in the same room as other people that tested positive. So there was really a lot of fear around that. But the offices were open if you wanted to go into them. Conversely, if you went into places like Singapore or India, the government said only essential businesses are allowed to be open. So businesses need to close their offices, right? So really having that sort of local mentality, and that's the way that we've built our business from the beginning, is I think one of the ingredients to our success. Because instead of saying, all right, here we are all sitting in HQ, we know what's best, this is our business, you have to do it this way, and there's no flexibility, no pun intended, within that framework, it's almost the opposite. We really empower all of our local leaders and our regional leaders to make the decisions that make the most sense for their business within frameworks that maintain consistency, level of service, and that sort of stuff. So I think that that's one of the big differences between perhaps how we approach our business strategy and some of the other flexible workspace providers that I've seen out there in the world, I guess. I think also we're super pedantic about our feasibility, so we don't do speculative growth, which has been the downfall of, I think, a lot of the players in the market. I mean, you just mentioned Servcorp, and they just exited Hong Kong completely. They said, we're out. We're not even going to operate in the city anymore. And for us, we don't move into new cities. We don't even move into new buildings if we're not 100% confident that our EBITDA margins are going to be met. A lot of that comes from demand. So we wait until we feel like we have, a threshold of interest from current clients in our remit, or from our agent and broker partners. And then we say, okay, actually now we feel like we have the runway to really make this successful. And that's why over our 29-year history, we've never had to close an office because it didn't make any money, which I'm really proud about. I think that's
shocking. Shocking.
It's amazing, right? Yeah. It's so crazy. Wow. I mean, we cry with landlords, and they say, sorry, we have a traditional tenant that wants to take your floor. We have to give it to them. We're like, no, why? It's such a successful business for us. We don't want to close this office, right? And I think that that's one sort of testament to the value proposition of our business. And I think that also really lends to the credibility factor, because across the world, you've seen and heard the horrible stories of providers just kind of closing their doors within 24 hours. And what kind of experience is that for clients? It's horrible, because then what are they going to do with their people? What are they going to do with their office? It's really unsettling. And so for us to be able to say, you can confidently open an office with TC and know that it's going to be there tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow, until you decide that you want to go somewhere else, or you want to move to a different office, or scale up or scale down. You don't have to worry about us not being around. So I think that's a big differentiating factor too. I would love to know from your guys' perspective the whole return to work phenomenon in the US, because I feel like it's very, very different than what's happening in Asia right now.
Wait, you go first and then we'll go.
Okay, cool. So people cannot wait to get back to the office in general. I mean, I think I have my own theories as to why that's the case. But I think in general, pre-COVID, the hybrid model was few and far between, I would say. Then obviously during COVID, a lot of people did work from home for extended periods of time. But I think one of the big differences is in Asia, the living situation is very different, right? So apartments are very small. It's multi-family homes, as in multi-family in the same
multi-generational. Yep.
Right. So there's not space, right? You're sharing with a lot of different people from a lot of, exactly like you said, different generations. So the productivity just naturally, it goes down, because you got your kids and your parents, and sometimes your brother's kids and the dogs and all of that, all trying to exist in the same space all of a sudden. So when people were able to come back to the office, they were like, hallelujah, I'm coming back immediately. And now I think people are embracing the hybrid model more, for sure. But I mean, our offices are full. We go in and the lounges are super busy. And we saw that pretty much right after all the quarantine and mask restrictions went down in Hong Kong. People were back right away.
All right, Jamie, go.
Oh, you're gonna make me go first. Yeah, I think that's super interesting. I was just trying to think of, do you know Dan from Vietnam? Gio, can you think of what
Like
it,
a
you know
forum
who
or
he is?
something.
Yes. Would
I
you?
know,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, he had talked about a similar phenomenon, which makes complete sense. And I kind of love that. I think it's really healthy that people want to be kind of back in. It's certainly wonderful for your business. It's very different here. I think people, because I think of markets, since you're from the US, markets like Atlanta, where people live in the suburbs and have giant homes and big home offices. And it's like they got super comfy and had them decorated and that is not, I'm generalizing certainly, but there's plenty of that. And just the inertia, I think, of having your setup at home is really hard to break. So I think just human behavior of like, yeah, it's just easy if I live my life in my 2,500 square feet, my little 10-minute circle. So, I mean, that's just one example. Certainly in urban environments, it's a little bit different, but also people leaving cities and just the dispersion of where people live has changed things too, which I think presents some fun opportunities. So operators who were not urban, who are more suburban, I'm thinking like Caddo, like your I can't remember what their tagline is, like your office away from home that's close to home kind of thing. I think that's a big win in many ways, but there's still just like, I think we're still, I think people were so excited to have choice that they're still like resisting out of, maybe sometimes even out of principle, right? Like, no, I'm not leaving my house. And we haven't seen, to the extent that I hope we will, companies paying for space, right? So even remote workers who now have this choice that they never had before, but nobody's footing the bill for the space. And so they're just going to stay at home. So I think there are a bunch of things at play, but the return is slower.
I think it's also interesting just from a cultural perspective. I mean, in Asia, having lived in Korea and now in Hong Kong, but I'm going to travel every other week to all of our markets. There's just a more, I don't know how to say this in the right politically correct sort of
We're
way.
uncensored. You don't have to be.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Well, people are just more, they follow the rules, I guess.
Yeah.
Right. If your boss says, come back to the office, okay,
I'll be there on Monday.
right?
Yeah,
There's no like,
yeah.
You can't tell me what to do. F the man. Like, I'm staying at home. I'll quit. I'll find something else. Like that mentality.
The great resignation, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like that doesn't really happen over here as much.
There are no eights
and I
in
think
Asia, Gio.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna have to refine myself by the time we go to Dubai. I may find control for chewing gum on the streets or something. But either way, I mean, I was gonna touch on that exact same thing on the culture side, right? I'm Mexican Italian, and so I've spent a lot of time in Latin American countries, and so for me, it has been seeing the shift to more of a work-life balance, right? So that's been huge. A lot of employees here, you mentioned in a lot of these Asian countries, they follow the rules, right? And so they do as they're told because that's what they're told to do. Here is the people have operated by fear most of the time, the fear of losing a job, the fear of their coworkers looking at them differently. But at the same time, the interesting part, and I had this conversation with multiple people during COVID, and why like the US and Canada were so different is same thing. In Canada, people didn't really always have choice, right? We had literally here in the US, not to go into history, right? We're all from the US, but you had a civil war because people didn't like what was going on, right? And so you have that polarizing culture here. And so I think that defines even further how we've had a return to the office has varied vastly different across the entire country, right? I was in Austin, Texas just yesterday, and Jamie and I had this conversation on our webinar with Drawer. Is in Austin, I mean, people are getting $1,000 to $1,200 a desk in downtown Austin, right? And they have limited parking. It's just incredible. But then you go to San Francisco down the street from where Jamie is, and you can't get people back in the office for $120 a desk, right? And so, I mean, that's obviously very polarizing on both sides. I mean, like I'll use Dallas, for example, is here, the suburbs are where people want to be. The 10 to 15 minute commute where you're close to your kids, you're close to home, you're close to your resources and all those things. And so I think that's what we're seeing, right? And so that's one side. The other side that you guys are a lot further on is the buy-in from landlords and enterprise, right? We're not there yet, right? We're getting closer, but certainly we still don't have a buy-in. I mean, we're starting to see more and more of these management deals take off, as opposed to in kind of the rest of the world, being the Eastern hemisphere, is most deals are only management deals, right? There's very few leases being signed. And so that's a good segue, I think, because you mentioned the landlords have come to you and they say, hey, we need the space for traditional tenants. So am I to assume that you guys only do management deals?
No,
Based off
actually, I'm surprised that you said that, because I feel like, yes, management deals are definitely part of the ecosystem, but I wouldn't say that they're the majority of the model that happens in Asia yet.
Okay.
I mean, we have management deals in our portfolio, but the majority of our portfolio are traditional leases. Now, your point about the partnership with the landlord is really important and absolutely valid, but I still think the majority of the transactions from a infrastructural perspective are the traditional, you sign the lease for a certain period of time and that how you operate, right? And I mean, there are a couple of reasons for that. Obviously, it goes back to the culture, right? So, I mean, I remember when I started in 2017, in some markets, we were really like, we had to beg landlords. We were like, we promise, like, we are credible. We're not bringing any bad people into your building. Like, here's a list of all of our clients. Give us a chance. It's gotten a lot better than that. So we don't necessarily have to beg anymore. But the management model, I think, is still something that landlords are trying to wrap their head around. That being said, what I have seen a big shift in is the interest from landlords and the recognition that having a flex provider in their development is very valuable for a lot of reasons, right? They're starting to look at us as opposed to just being another one of those traditional style tenants, because you can think of it that way, right? If you sign a traditional lease, you're a traditional tenant. They don't really care whether you're making money from the people that are sharing your office or not, right? Because you still have to pay their rent. That position is changing, I would say, or that perspective. Whereas now they're saying this is actually an amenity that can be valuable for all of our other tenants that are also traditional tenants in this stack, right? Which makes a big difference, because we need landlords to help us, right? I mean, think about the ecosystem. If we are able to tap into the other 60 floors in that stack where we are only 2, right? I mean, what a business opportunity for all of the other products and services if clients are, and this is why it's an amenity for the building too, right? Because if you have a huge MNC as a landlord in your building and all of a sudden they go through a hiring spree and they need to bring in 200 more people or 100 more people and they don't have any space, what are they going to do, right? They either have to go and find another office in a different building to put those people, or they have to take a whole floor of your building if you have that available, which doesn't make sense because then that's not, you're paying for space that you don't use. So if the landlord can say, look, don't worry, we understand you don't have space, why don't you talk to the executive center? They're in the same building, the same tower as you, they'll definitely be able to help you out, right? So we have so many examples of that, and it works the other way around, right? So we see ourselves also as incubators. There are lots of stories where we've had clients that have done market entry, for example, or have put a project team that went really well. They're growing. All of a sudden, they have too many people to be in the executive center. So then they move to a floor above or another floor within that and take a traditional lease with the landlord. So it's a mutually beneficial sort of back and forth flow. And I think as a flexible provider, we have to rely on the infrastructure that the landlords are creating, right? Because we can only control what's in our office, but we still have to rely on, did they build their building to well standards? What does their HVAC system look like? So finding the right landlords that sort of line up to your, sustainability, ESG goals, and also like the thought process behind the community, I think is quite important. And we made a statement in 2022 that we weren't going to open any other building or any other offices in non-green certified buildings. So I'm super proud of that. I think about 6%. yeah, 65% of our portfolio is now in green buildings.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And just from a brand positioning perspective, you're in, it looks like Class A buildings.
Only grade A.
Yeah, I mean, your spaces are, I'm just on your website, just what I can see. To your point, unique. None of them look the same, but really beautiful, professional, just like high-end premium design.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's interesting you mentioned earlier how we sort of flown under the radar. And I mean, that's definitely true. Like I mentioned, the marketing department only started 6.5 years ago. So you have to kind of prove your value before you start getting the WeWork budgets. I hope my CEO watches this and hears right. But I think one of the big differences for us as well from a branding perspective is when you walk into any of our offices, you don't see the big neon, the executive center sign anywhere, right? We are super, super subtle on our in-center branding, which is a really interesting challenge from a marketing perspective, because obviously you want people to know that they're in your space, but you also don't want people to know that they're in your space, right? Because if we have Goldman Sachs as one of our clients, for example, right, or a Google or a Meta or whatever, like when their clients walk in, they don't want them to feel like they're walking into the executive center. They want them to feel like they're walking into their own respective office. And so that's why we're super conscious about having very subtle branding in the centers, because we want it to feel like all of those reception areas, the lounge areas, all of those shared spaces are extensions of each one of our member or client groups' offices. It's so funny. I've had several experiences where I've introduced the executive center. I've met somebody at a networking event or something like that, right? Said, oh, what do you do? And I explain, well, who we are. And they same response as you guys, like, so many offices? How, what? That's so weird. How's that possible? I've never heard of you guys. And I kind of explain a little bit. And they say, well, where are you in Hong Kong, for example? Oh, IFC, Chinatown. They, wait a minute, Chinatown, like what floors? The same floor, they go, isn't that? And then they'll name a client, right? Well, yeah, their office is with us. They go, I have been to hundreds of meetings at that office, and I always just thought that it was X client's name office. And for me, I'm like, we're doing our job well. That's cool.
It's like, it's more like being a platform. I'm trying to think of how else, right? Than
we say facilitator.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
And I think, I mean, one of the really cool things that we're starting to see more here in the US that has kind of taken off, and we've obviously seen it in New York, that isn't a total anomaly over here. We've seen it in London and parts of Europe. And then clearly what we see behind me, if you're watching the video or we've seen the pictures, is almost more of like a social club type of setting. So you want to talk about kind of your brand and kind of what your product looks like and feels like, and how it's kind of evolved over time, if it has, or if it's just kind of stayed the same with your build outs and stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So thank you very much. That beautiful center behind you is our Three Garden Road Center in Hong Kong, one of my favorites. So if you looked out the window behind you, you would see, Hong Kong Harbor, some of the iconic skyline buildings that most people are probably familiar with. Our design has absolutely evolved. I mean, Jamie mentioned earlier, like not one of them looks the same, which is true, but there are definitely synergies between all of the offices. So from a design perspective, we want people to know that they're in a TEC, but also be surprised about how different it is from the other TEC that they've been to in a different region. And it also goes back to that regionalization. So like I said, that office behind you is in Hong Kong, but if you went into India, the walls would be purple and red, and there would be tons of color, and it would feel different because in India, the design aesthetic is different, right? And so that's very important for us. I think 10 years ago, I can even talk from my own perspective when I was a TEC client. So I worked in our Gangnam Finance Center in Seoul. And to be totally honest with you, funny enough, I didn't like it very much. And I told our CEO that when I had my first interview with him, and he was a bit like, what? I said, well, look, I mean, we're like two 30-year-old women that moved from America to a country where we didn't know any people. And we really were hoping that we would make some friends. And this is not the office where you go to make friends, right? So when WeWork opened, we were like, can we move to that office, please? We want to go meet some creative folk, all the stereotypes that you associate with all of these respective brands, right? And our client said no, right? And we were like, what? Why not? And we even went and looked at the offices and they said, because you can't, it's not soundproof. You can't put anything on the windows. We don't want you working in a communal environment because all of the material that you're dealing with is like super top secret, which is ironically now all of the USPs that I sell for the executive center, because it is soundproof. You can customize your office however you want. We will build out full suites of IT technology that suits your global standards, right? Which you don't get in any of our competitors. So it's quite funny that flip. And now I really, obviously on the other side, I really appreciate that. But also our design has evolved like, I mean, just kind of flipped back and forth. Back 10 years ago, people didn't, that shared concept, especially in like the corporate MNC world, it didn't exist, right? You didn't have this idea of communal areas. People sat at their own desks and did their own thing. And there wasn't this idea of maybe if you went and sat in like a different environment, you'd feel a little bit more inspired. But that shift really happened. And I give WeWork a lot of credit for sort of breaking open that conversation and motivating people to think about what does collaboration mean. And our clients are now, that's something that they want, right? They want to have that access to those like softer spaces. And just like every flexible provider, that's one of the big USPs, right? Is you have your private office, but then you have access to all of these shared amenities that are part of that package. But 10 years ago, we didn't have any of those lounge areas, right? They were just a little canteen that had a nice coffee machine and maybe one or two little seating areas. And we had some seating areas in the reception. But I mean, now there's no office that doesn't have like a full service barista bar with a professional barista there to make your double macchiato skim with like an extra shot of vanilla syrup sort of thing, right? And the kinds of spaces that we've put into those lounge areas have also definitely changed. So like the one you see before behind Giovanni, that's one big sort of lounge. This is one of our earlier iterations. I would say that one opened in like 2018, I think. So you can see lots of lounge furniture, very much that sort of club feel, with like one long table, but it doesn't have plugs. So it's not necessarily the most conducive to sitting down and doing like actual work. Now, if you look at some of our newest designs, you've really got a bunch of different kinds of seating areas. So you still have that lounge area, which is great for casual conversations, interviews, stuff like that. But then we've got long co-working tables that are fully plugged with screens that people can plug into if they're just dropping in for like an hour. Then we've got different kind of like huddle pods if you want to have like a more like small group kind of working session, but you need laptops out. There's like tables with chair, like with desks, and they're all in one area. And then we've got, technology now, so big digital screens in all of our different centers, and we've got different sizes of meeting rooms, which we've started to optimize based off of usage trends, right? We used to put one big boardroom in every single office. Now it's like, maybe we don't need the boardroom because people don't use that as much, right? So, or maybe we need to build it in a more flexible way where we have partition doors that open when it needs to be a 20-person boardroom, but then we can separate it and then it's 2 rooms of 10, and then we can separate it again, so it's 4 rooms of 5, that kind of thing. So I think we're always looking at the market and what our clients are asking us for, and I always encourage my team. The majority of the marketing team sits here in Hong Kong, which is our HQ. And then we have regional marketing managers that sit in our markets. But I always have to push people out because our HQ is beautiful. I'm like, go sit in the offices, go work in the lounge, see what people are using, over eavesdrop, listen to the conversations that are happening, because it's going to inspire you to think about our business in new ways. And maybe there are USPs that are really valuable to people that we didn't even know, because we're not the ones that are actually there working in that specific environment every day. So yeah, I'm really proud of I love our offices. I move around. Like the other day, it's so funny. People said, oh, there are all these surveys going around. Do you work from home or do you work from the office? I'm like, wow, what a conundrum for me. I don't know. I mean, I don't work from home very often. Like I would say maybe 5% of my time. But I work from an office 5 days a week for sure, but it's never the same office. Right? Yeah. Because I go to my HQ and then I go to one of the other ones in Central, and then I move from there to the other one in Central, or a different pocket, a different neighborhood. So for me, it's that question of like, how many days do you go to the office is way too black and white.
So here's the first curveball for you.
Tell me.
So you're obviously extremely passionate, successful, and charismatic. If you were giving 10-year-old Chelsea advice, what advice would you give her today?
Where was I when I was 10 years old? Okay, so I was in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Wow. I think my advice would be don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, and more than that, don't ever feel like the decisions that you made that you decided to change were a waste of time. Because I think that was something I really struggled with when I was deciding to not go to medical school. Like that was the conundrum. And I'm really fortunate. My parents, I didn't want to be a doctor because I have like a long lineage of like doctors in my family. So my parents were like, you want to be a doctor? Good for you. That's weird, but like go for it. Like, so the pressure wasn't coming from there, but the pressure of, wow, you've invested so much time in this progression. You went to a really competitive school and you spent all this money studying for the MCAT, and then you took it, right? And you have the scores that would get you into medical school. Why wouldn't you just do it, right? And I struggled with that for a while. And then I finally realized, like, because I actually just don't want to do it. And now I'm number one, it was the best decision I ever made, but I don't for a minute feel like that entire track was a waste of time. And I feel like a lot of people, that's the hindrance. They feel like, oh wow, I've invested so much energy into this. If I don't do it, then all of that was wasted energy. And I think that's a completely wrong approach.
Yeah, and I think it's such a great example of our life, right? I mean, we all act like COVID it was a difficult thing, but it wasn't catastrophic, right? It's helped a lot. Most people that I know, it's made them better, helped them appreciate the smaller stuff, helped them on their journey, and really added value to their life, right? And that doesn't take away from how difficult it was to go through and the things we had to overcome. But I think it kind of even prepared us for the current financial crisis, and whether you want to call it a recession or not, whatever you want to call it, I think it was it created a softer landing place, if you will. But it's just so interesting how what we go through has the ability to make us either victims or victors, right? And so how do you play through that is such a big part of how we evolve.
Do you want to know my COVID silver lining? I'm so glad you bring that up because I 1000% agree that it was, nobody is going to say that it was a super fun period of time, that it wasn't hard, because it was for all of those reasons. But I don't think that I've met a single person that hasn't had at least one positive outcome that's come from that. And mine was that obviously I've lived abroad for a long time. And as you guys know, Albuquerque, New Mexico is not the most convenient place to get to, especially if you live in Asia. So I don't go back there very often, which is really sad because I obviously would love to be able to spend more time with my parents, but it's the run of the business. You just kind of, other things take priority. And because of COVID in 2021, and because of the situation in Hong Kong, our company was really, really flexible and really kind in terms of giving us the option to go for much longer periods of time than we would have originally been able to do, and take like long holidays all at once and build in work from wherever periods of time into that as well. So I'm super grateful that the Executive Center did that for us. But because of that, I went back to the US and I did a 3.5-week road trip with my parents in their RV as a 30-something-year-old woman in a 250 square foot RV with my parents. And we started in California, we drove all the way up, we went into Sonoma, and we came through San Francisco, and then we drove down through all the national parks and went into Arizona, went to the Grand Canyon, and then came back and spent some time in New Mexico. And I guarantee you that would have never, ever happened if it hadn't been for COVID.
Yeah. So you'll always have that time and those memories. That's a great story.
Yeah, for sure.
Wait, I have to interject really quickly. Chelsea, there's a book called Quit by Annie Duke. Have you ever heard of this book?
I haven't.
Okay, I feel like because you've experienced what you described, she talks about in the book, she's super interesting. She is a very, very successful professional poker player, but
Oh.
started out in something medical. I can't remember, but anyway, she studied like why people won't quit things or why they struggle, like with what you just said, like it's part of their identity. They've been, I've listened to it twice. I almost never listen to books twice, but I listen to the audiobook. So
Oh, awesome.
if you're an
Thank you so
audiobook
much.
person, I totally recommend it.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I've added it to my list. I'm always looking for new inspiring things. Thank you so much.
Cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Okay, Gio, what's your next
well, we
halftime
haven't touched
question?
really a big part on the enterprise side, right? We've said a little bit about it, but kind of what are you seeing from an enterprise side over there? I mean, where are they in their buy-in? How are they basically going into your spaces? Obviously, you mentioned some big names with Google and Meta and some of those, but are those actual clients that are going in and taking team spaces? Are they taking larger suites, floors? Kind of what are you seeing that across your portfolio?
Yeah, so I mean, we have a couple of different categories of classification for clients, right? So in a traditional TEC center, we have what we call a bulk client, right? Which is a client that takes a quarter or more of a floor. That's another one of our sort of ingredients to success, is we're also quite protective of the percentage of client split floor by floor, right? So we would never lease out like 50% of one of our traditional offices to a single client without like very clear contractual parameters that protect if those clients decide that they're going to leave, because obviously all of a sudden you have a 50% occupancy gap, like that's a big issue, right? So we're quite conscious of that, but we do have bulk clients. And then we have what we call the enterprise model, which is where a client comes to us and says, look, we want to open a new office. We're really not interested in investing all of the energy that goes into actually doing that. And I think it's funny because, and even myself included, before I got into this industry, I thought, oh, how hard can it possibly be, right? Go find an office, sign a lease, buy some desks, like whatever, right? Like, yeah, that's not the case. It is such a pain in the ass to open an office, especially if you're looking at anything more than like 5 people. It just turns into like such a nightmare. And so we're seeing a lot of big clients come to us and say, look, we have 500 people. We want a new office. We really don't want to go through the hassle of trying to figure out how to do this on our own. Can you just do it for us? And then of course they can tap into the benefits that extend from our expertise in the market, which is all of our supply chain contracts, our economies of scale from a procurement perspective, the relationship that we have with standing with landlords in those respective cities that give us preferential sort of priorities in terms of what's coming onto the market. And so we'll work with clients to say, okay, cool, if you want the full 360-degree service, that means that we will go and find a building for you that is within your budget parameters. We'll negotiate the lease with whatever brokers is involved in that and the landlord. Then we will design the space for you. We'll build it. We'll cover all of the CapEx, and then we'll operate it for you if that's what you want. So that means all of the IT staff, the reception, all of the cleaning staff, will operate that whole floor for you. So then you just put your people in there. Right. And you have one point of contact from TEC that manages all the logistics, all of that stuff, so that you can actually spend your time doing other things. And then that cost gets amortized across the contract length. And people love it. Right. I mean, first of all, they don't have to put in CapEx, which is every CFO's dream. They go, yeah, cool. That already sounds great. But just the amount of human resources that go into building an office, it really is time consuming. Especially if you're a head of corporate real estate that's sitting in London and you're trying to open an office in India. I mean, all of the different cultural nuances that go with negotiations and getting supply in and all of that stuff. I mean, you gain a lot from working with a local partner that has done that. So to your question earlier, Giovanni, about where we're seeing more traction, it is in the less, I would say, like the tier 2, tier 3 kinds of cities, specifically in China and in India, where people are like, we don't want to deal with this. Like, we don't want to deal with the language. We don't want to deal with the culture. Yeah. Just help us do it. And then obviously there's also the timing, right? Because from a a global MNC perspective, if you suddenly need to onboard 50 different companies into your procurement systems, right? So that means
Right.
you got to get the agents in there, you got to get the landlords in there, you got to get every single individual supplier so that you can supply POs. I mean, you're talking a lot of time. So if you just have to onboard TEC and then you pay one rent once the office is done, like, wow, I think we've gotten people into office like 6 to 8 months faster than they had projected they would have been able to do if they had done it by themselves.
Yeah. And to your point, with like thousands of fewer man hours, just right. Focus on what you do, not the complications of, I mean, it's an interesting part of the business model, which probably hard to anticipate. I mean, talk about office as a service, right? It's like the ultimate office as a service. We'll do it for you. Do you operate that space or?
We
Okay.
can. So
Yeah.
it really depends. Like that's sort of the full 360 is the source, design, build, operate, that whole package. But some people say after the design piece is done and the handover happens, they go, we're happy to take the operation piece and do that ourselves. We say, okay, great, no problem. Right. I hate to use like the flexibility pun, but it literally is like a fully customized solution. So whatever the clients are is going to be the best for them, then that's what we try to deliver.
I'm still honestly 140 locations in so what's your average location size?
No, I think
About
it's 180, Gio.
180, it is.
Yeah.
You might
even
say
better,
40.
180. That's great.
Yeah.
180, and what's your
about
average
40,000
size?
square feet. Yeah, about 4,000 square feet. 40,000, sorry.
40.
Yeah. Usually one or two floors, depending on the size. I mean, our Dubai space is really big. I think that one's like 55,000 square feet. Some of them are smaller, but yeah, averages out to be about 40,000.
That's
And about
7
20
million. So that's 7 million square feet of real estate.
Yeah, it's a lot.
That's incredible. And so I'm so excited to just keep diving deeper into kind of how y'all operate and do business. And I think it'll be super unique to do that at CoreNet with having an audience from Europe, Asia. I think you'll probably pick up some people from Australia and New Zealand. I think are be coming up, and even a couple of the other outlying markets. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun to really dive deeper into that. And I think today was great to just start touching the surface, right? And getting to know a little bit more. Jamie, you got a question to finish us up?
I do. What's your karaoke song?
I'm gonna say something that is so not kosher in Asia, which is like I actually don't like karaoke. Everybody will hang me for this. I know, I understand. But this is why, and I will go back to my roots. And it's because in Asia, it's all these karaoke rooms. Like, what is the fun of singing karaoke with a bunch of people that already know you? Like, karaoke is about being at a gross bar, getting on a stage in front of a bunch of strangers and making a fool of yourself.
Yeah.
So in that environment, it is Sweet Home Alabama.
Okay, there we go.
Five. That's mine too.
Is it really? No kidding.
It's mine because I typically pull people up with me, and you don't have to do it by yourself.
That's a really good strategy.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Jamie, what's yours?
You'll catch me singing Sweet Home Alabama on occasion.
Okay. Jamie, what's yours?
I have to think of one that's podcast appropriate.
Well, I got video, so.
Gio does have video. Yeah, I did live band karaoke one time to an AC/DC song, and it is one of my favorite memories of my whole life.
Amazing.
A live band.
So
and
awesome.
You get to sing, and to your point, just make a complete fool of yourself.
Yeah,
and drag people up on stage with you.
Totally. I'll get behind that in a second. Oh, that's so fun.
Good.
AC/DC, that's a challenge. That's good.
Yeah, well, it can be done.
She's got skills. Well, thank you so much for taking time, and again, looking forward to meeting you in person and spending time on that panel at CoreNet. So
yeah, it's going to be really fun. I'm looking forward to it too. Thank you guys so much. I really enjoyed the conversation today.
Absolutely.
Likewise.
Have a great day.
Thanks for doing that.
You guys too. Take care.